Hello and welcome back to another episode of the weekly news on the For the Property Investor podcast. And of course, the only man that brings us the news is Nick Bendel. Hello, Nick.
Hello, Owen. Always great to join you.
Of course it is. Just ask me. But thank you again anyway. And it's the news that you bring us, Nick, every week. But before we get into the official news, what's been happening in your week in the past week?
Yes, this is the unofficial news. I've had a very enjoyable week, very productive week. And we signed a client. And when I say we, this is my business, Hunter and Scribe. It's a copywriting agency that writes content for finance and property businesses. We signed a new client, which is a real estate agency that wants help with regular blog and newsletter content. We're looking forward to working with them.
Oh, very good. It's real estate agents, some of my favorite people.
They are very good people. This is an office of a particular national group.
Right. Okay. Can you say what sort of location in the country they are?
An exclusive location with rather pricey real estate.
Ooh, okay. Well, yes, you might end up giving it away if you give the specific suburb then. But been a busy week for us. Of course, it was end of month, as everyone knows. It's a busy time of the month for us, but it was very successful for our owners. And lots of rent increases have been happening lately in the past month or so, all across the country in different regions, and still a lot of leasing happening. It's interesting to see the different areas of the country that are leasing quickly and leasing well, and others that can be a bit stubborn. And but some of them come down to individual types of property. So it's not always across the board. Sometimes it does come down to the specific type of property as well. So
We're I was going to say we're in October, so we're approaching the end of the year. Do you give any advice to your landlords around the timing of lease renewals? Are there some months you tell them to avoid?
Yes. So we don't like to start leases in December or even January. So if leases are for some reason falling in those 2 months, just because of difficulty and for tenants and owners. So it's both sides to give some security to people during those summer months and holiday months where we would like to try and prevent any issues with being able to exit a property and finding a new property. So yes, if something's getting leased in, say, January, we try to organise like either a 10-month lease or a 13-month lease, just to be able to get it out of that December, January period.
I like it. Okay, well, that is very interesting. And are there particular months of the year that tend to have higher tenant demand than others? So I'm wondering, say the warmer months, do you have more demand than in the colder months?
Oh, that can be very area specific. So if you're in a beachy area, coastal area, then the spring and summer months can definitely be busier. But then when you've got areas where people want to get into school catchments for their kids to get into schools, that November, December, January period can be quite sought after. or even a bit earlier, because if they need to be in by sort of November so that they can put in the enrollments before um, a certain date, it depends on the area and the school. They need to have that signed lease in place so that they can secure that enrollment. So, so that can drive in some suburbs where there are sought after selective schools or sought after schools with where they need to be living in close proximity within those catchment areas.
Well, let's move from the rental market to the sales market for our first story today, which is
Yes.
prices rise for eighth consecutive month. Australia's median property price increased another 0.8% in September, the largest monthly gain in 2 years, according to Cotality. Every capital city saw prices rise in September as low stock levels continued to push up demand. On a quarterly basis, prices jumped 5.9% in Darwin, 4% in Perth, and 3.5% in Brisbane. Those cities also saw the steepest drops in advertised listings. Darwin was 53% below average, Perth 45% below, and Brisbane 31% below. With fewer homes to choose from and more buyers in the market, conditions are tightening quickly. Owen, do you have any theories about why listings are at such low levels in Darwin, Perth, and Brisbane right now?
Yes, interesting. It's well let's I mean Darwin is I mean yes it's the capital of Northern Territory, but it's still quite a small small city, and so those things can happen in smaller cities from time to time. But let's be looking at Perth and Brisbane um, for it's interesting to see that Perth is still um, uh, moving forward price wise, where we thought it would sort of hit a bit of a brick wall and even possibly fall off a cliff in terms of growth, but it's still got legs. And it may be because of this steep drop in listings.
Hmm.
And because, as we now know, especially in those for anyone that listens to us on this podcast, that supply and demand is the main driving factor for anything that is market driven price wise. Do you agree, Nick?
Well, I would never be so stupid as to disagree with you, Owen. So, of course, if you reduce supply, that's going to increase demand and
Yes.
lead to higher prices. But in terms of why there's lower supply, is it because people are worried about selling and then having to buy into a higher market and do they a rising market and do they think, well, we'll just hold on until prices stop rising?
Well, both Perth and Brisbane have had good long runs in terms
Hmm.
of price increases. And so it can be a bit of a where anyone that was going to sell, going to move, has done so. Um, and so we can have a bit of a lull in the market
Hmm.
where where anyone that was going to sell has done so, and due to prices increasing, and they've taken advantage of that fact. So now you would have a lot of people in that market that are just sitting there. They don't need to sell. They don't want to sell. So there's no real reason for those listings to happen. So where we have year after year of high demand, which pushes the high supply, and they get these high turnover in properties. Eventually, it gets to the point where um, there becomes a lack of volume in the marketplace. And if there's still demand, then that will, even if it's lower demand, then it'll still keep on pushing up prices. So that's likely what's happening in Perth and Brisbane at the moment.
Okay, taking a national view, prices have risen for 8 consecutive months. Do you see that run ending anytime soon?
Probably not, and especially with what was launched now close to a week ago with the extension of the first home buyer scheme by the federal government, with caps, in some areas, pretty much doubled, and a lot of those income restrictions taken off as well. So it's it got to the point where if you haven't owned property in 10 years, or at all, then if you don't buy in the next 6 months, then it's you're really missing the boat. It's the federal government has really given a big push here, and everyone's been warning about it. Anyone who knows anything about the property market has said, "Well, look out! It's like a big boost in the side of the arm for the property market to really inject a lot of demand." And what happens when we inject a lot of demand? Well, prices go up. So it's yes, I think we're going to continue to see that regardless. And I really don't think we needed it because, as you can see from the past, what was it, 8 months? We have had continued growth month after month, quarter after quarter. And we really didn't need this extra demand when there's not enough supply in the market already.
You spoke a minute ago about people who might have been thinking about buying but hadn't yet pulled the trigger. Well, what do you think would be the number one impediment to people buying right now? Would it be interest rates, affordability, economic uncertainty, something else?
The only reason why people should not be considering buying right now is because they simply can't afford it. And whether they think they can afford it, or whether the bank does in terms of being able to service and having that serviceability of a loan to qualify for a loan. So that's probably the only reason why not. So, I mean, you can get in with a 5% deposit now. And even if you have to move out of your comfortable area that you're in, if you're trying to get into the property market, go find that property. You need to live in it for at least 12 months and do what you can to get into that market, into any market. Of course, don't buy any property. Get the advice of a buyer's agent if you need to, or just spend the time, do your homework, and find that property that you can get into so you can get into the market. And once you've done that, give it time, because as we said as well many times here, it's time in the market, not timing the market. And as long as you're in there, just the word of caution is being able to get into a 95% loan is great, and with the government sort of backing it, but it's still a bigger loan, and it means bigger repayments. So you need to make sure that you can afford it and that you're comfortable with being able to afford it. Now, the bank isn't going to give you the money if they don't think you can afford it, but you need to be self-aware in terms of whether you think you're going to afford it, because you can get yourself into trouble. And with short-term changes in markets, where some markets will go flat and some markets will even go backwards by 5 or 10% at different times. We don't know what markets and we don't know when. So that's where you need to make sure that you're comfortable on a long-term basis that you can afford this property, especially if interest rates do go back up and you've got a 95% loan. So that's the big risk for a lot of people who are getting into these first home buyer schemes.
Well, you've touched upon the first home guarantee and, the home guarantee scheme, and we'll just talk about that a bit more for our next story. New era begins for first home buyers. The home guarantee scheme has been expanded as of 1 October. It now includes unlimited places, no income restrictions, and higher property price caps. That means more first home buyers can enter the market with a 5% deposit and avoid lender's mortgage insurance. One might expect that making it easier for first home buyers to enter the market would lead to more demand, especially at the lower end of the market, and therefore higher prices. However, Treasury modelling suggests this policy change will cause property prices to increase by just 0.5% over 6 years. So, Owen, firstly, do you think the expansion of this scheme will lead to an increase in first home buyer activity? And if so, to what extent?
Yes, and yes, and yes. And to what extent? Well, it anyone with some common sense would understand that Treasury modelling needs to be remodeled. 0.5% over a 6-year period. Well, I think they pulled that figure out because I mean, how are you going to be able to know? Because yeah, we will probably go beyond that 0.5% in the next month, and so it's unmeasurable in a real world experience. So we won't even know whether they're right or wrong anyway. But it's because as soon as it's happened, we don't know what exactly has fueled it. But common sense prevailing, which isn't very common, would say that yes, it would be much more than 0.5% over 6 years.
Yeah, I must admit, I was surprised that the number was so low. It didn't seem plausible. But there you go. That's the
I
number
mean,
about.
even if they said 5% over 6 years, you would go, well, that's not even 1% a year. It's just like, surely it's going to do more than that. And but it's, yeah, you never know. Yeah. Did we read it wrong and it was supposed to be 0.5% a year over the next 6 years, or was it just 0.5% over the whole of the 6 years?
It was the latter.
Right. Okay. Well, you never know. I mean, the first home buyer market is a small percentage of the market. I mean, if you measured the percentage of the market for first home buyers based on the media attention it gets, you would think it was like 60% of the market, but it's a very small amount of the market that in terms of transactions, but it is an important one for people to get into the market. So I hope everyone that can take advantage of it does, because it might not be around forever.
Well, that's a very interesting thought because over the years, federal and state governments, they've introduced a million different housing incentives. They've come, they've gone. Right now, we're talking about an expansion of the home guarantee scheme. Maybe it'll be changed in the future. Maybe it'll be eliminated. Do you think federal and state governments should stop interfering in the market in this way, or do you think there is a place for these kinds of housing schemes?
No, I don't think they should be getting involved in the market like this. It's it adds too much volatility to the market. It's and that where they should be interfering is on the supply side. If they want to make it easier for first home buyers to get into the market, then make sure the right type of supply in terms of stock is coming onto the market, to make it easier for them to be able to get into the market, and make sure the right type of supply in the right type of areas. That's the role of the government, to make sure infrastructure and supply of the market, and to make sure that the market can look after itself. So, yeah, the government is supposed to be the umpire on the field. They're not supposed to be the ones on the field injecting steroids into the players.
Well, property supply, I hear you say. That seems like something pertinent to discuss in our third and final
Sure.
story, which
Wow.
is government falls further behind on its home building target. New data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics shows that a total of 14,744 dwelling approvals were issued in August, which was 3% higher than the previous year, but 6% lower than the previous month. Also, it was well below the minimum of 20,000 approvals needed each month for the federal government to achieve its National Housing Accord target, which is the building of 1.2 million new homes in the 5 years to June 2029. The federal government's housing accord is in tatters, the Institute of Public Affairs said. In operation for barely a year, the accord is now a full 3 months behind schedule. This means 60,000 promised homes have not been delivered, which while Australians continue to struggle to put a roof over their head. The federal government has not got close to hitting a single target under its much vaunted National Housing Accord, and Australia's acute housing crisis rolls on. Owen, to build 1.2 million new homes in 5 years, there need to be at least 20,000 approvals per month. I say at least because some approvals never result in a completion. Yet in the 14 months since this 5-year period started, approvals have been below 20,000 every single time. Why are so few individuals and developers applying for building approvals right now?
Well, a lot of it comes down to the ability to get finance for these building approvals. So, I believe there's an initiative from the New South Wales state government to be able to help with guaranteeing some of these building approvals for developers. And when they talk about 20,000 homes or 1.2 million homes in the next 5 years, they're not talking about houses. They're talking about any type of home, which includes units, townhouses, and so on. So when politicians are talking about this, what they're focusing on is large scale developments, and they're trying to because that is what will give them the large numbers quickly in large ways. And of course, with Labor governments in federal and most states at the moment, they know that they can have the most influence with their union mates to be able to get these things built. And also one way of being able to help these buildings get done and to help push up the prices of these wages, and which then flows through to union dues, by the way, as a percentage for the unions, is to make sure that property prices are nice and high. So that's another reason why politicians would want prices to keep on going up, and especially with all of the current federal and state governments. But in essence, a lot of these developers struggle to get to even the approval stage, because why bother trying to put an application in for something that to get approved when you can't even raise the funds and the finance to be able to build them. So I can understand why people go after the big fish. Even politicians see, oh, yeah, there's this development they can build 100 houses at once, or 100 homes in a building. Or there's this other one that can do 500, or another one that can do 1,000. So they see these big numbers and get excited by that. But maybe we just need to go back to basics and focus on getting single houses approved ASAP, and make that process a lot easier. And again, to give credit to the New South Wales state government, they're doing a lot to be able to help speed up the process of approvals and cutting out a lot of the red tape, which we've talked about at length in the past, Nick, with that being a lot of the providing a lot of the holdups in the building approval process. It takes such a long time to get these building approvals through. So yes, at least the New South Wales state government is so I do give credit due where it's due, and it's with fixing that approval process, that'll give us a chance to improve that. But yeah, whether it's to build 1,000-unit complex or whether it's to build one house, let's get that process nice and easy, or certainly a lot easier than it is now. And also let's it's easier to get one house funded than it is to get a 100-unit complex funded for finance. So yes, we need both, but let's start on with the small fish, and let's put 1,000 lines in the pond to catch a lot of fish at once.
Well, final question before we say goodbye. The Institute of Public Affairs, that's a conservative think tank. They said Australia is experiencing, quote, an acute housing crisis. Do you think that's accurate, or is that an exaggeration?
It is certainly not an exaggeration, and it all depends on where we're talking about and in the country, and it's certainly not getting easier.
Mm.
We've seen in the past that it was very bad in certain areas, when we're not seeing those very acute issues in isolated areas. But yes, it's certainly not getting better anytime soon. And if the amount of immigration that we've had in the last number of years continues at the high levels, even though they're saying that they're reducing the amount of immigration, it still needs to be reduced a lot more. And again, I don't care where they're cutting the immigration from or where we're bringing people in. And yes, we still need more people come in to fill certain roles and jobs in the economy. But we just need to reduce some of those unnecessary amounts of immigration that are taking up a lot of housing to take the pressure off.
Well, this has been a really interesting discussion, as always, Owen. Appreciate your time. Looking forward to chatting again next week.
Thanks, Nick. And yes, look forward to hearing what's in the news next week. See you then.